Supermarket customers backed away in disgust at the sight of his hunched but no less tall figure. The tramp was dressed in such rags that not everyone would agree to wipe their shoes with them, let alone put them on themselves. And yet, characteristic stench emanated from the beggar. The smell of unwashed body, wine fumes, and something else peculiar to all vagabonds mixed into a single creepy ambergris, the composition of which would drive the most sophisticated perfumer crazy. The beggar held a top hat in his hands, handing it to everyone he met with the expectation of filling the headdress with large denomination bills soon. Probably without exception, any poor guy in his soul cherishes the hope that one day luck will smile on him in a person of a wealthy gentleman. But fortune was clearly not on the side of the beggar today. There were only a few cents in his hat, which, judging by the expression on the tramp's face, did not please him at all. Desperately, the beggar even tried to entertain passers-by with a couple of improvised tricks and uncomplicated songs, but of course he did not bring the desired success. With a sigh of disappointment, the beggar returned to his former place and sat down on a carefully placed cardboard box which is used to be a TV package. The gaze of his attentive eyes slid over the faces of the passers-by, hurrying about their business. To the chagrin of the tramp, his actions were noticed by a supermarket security guard, who resolutely left his post and went outside, naturally for a beggar. This did not bode well. But despite the unfriendly look of the guard, the tramp calmly sat on his makeshift throne made of cardboard and looked at what was happening. "Hey, what's your name? I don't think you belong here. Your appearance will scare away all visitors," the young guard said, unequivocally touching the baton on his belt with his hand. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing anything wrong," the beggar dared to timidly object. Unfortunately, the young guard was not impressed by the beggar's words at all. Henry Simpson, more than anything in the world, wanted to curry favor with his superiors and get the coveted promotion. Therefore, when he saw a tramp in front of him, the guy immediately realized that this was his chance. "If you don't leave in a minute, I'll call the police, and also, I'm sure that at the station you will tell a lot of interesting things," the guard said with a cheeky smile. "Sir, I beg you, there is no need for the police after all. I have done no harm for anyone," the beggar whispered with tears in his eyes. But Henry Simpson was already unstoppable, grabbing the beggar by the collar. The guard, reveling in the power, swung at him. Instinctively backing away, Tramp stumbled and sprawled on the steps. At the same time, passers-by followed everything that is happening with interest. They simply wanted show, and were not going to help a beggar tramp at all. But as it turned out later, not everybody was so indifferent and unhuman. Having pushed aside the indifferent spectators, a fragile girl hurried to the place of improvised massacre, who clutched a violin case with one hand and with the other led a little boy of about 6. "Come on, stop it! Do you hear me? Stop this outrage immediately!" the stranger exclaimed, and pushing the guard away, helped the beggar to get up. "How are you? Are you okay?" the girl asked sympathetically, bending over the prostrate tramp. "It's nothing. I've seen worse days," the street wanderer replied in a calm voice. "Mom, why was the uncle offended?" asked the boy, who most likely was the son of a merciful defender. "I was beaten for being a beggar, kid," the tramp replied in a gentle voice. After his words, Henry Simpson blushed and hurried to retreat from the scene. Most likely the guard realized that the situation with his tramp does not bode well for him, and the girl who stood up for the beggar was already ready to disappear into the human flow of the metropolis. "Okay, we're in a hurry, Kevin," the stranger said hurriedly and tightened her grip on a violin case. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm very grateful. Is there any way I can thank you?" the beggar asked sympathetically. "No, thanks. You can't even help yourself," the girl said with doubt in her voice, and resolutely taking the boy by the hand rushed toward the bus station. The street beggar thoughtfully looked after the departing strange couple and sighed sadly. Finally, tearing his gaze away from the departing unexpected rescuers, he got up and shuffled around the corner of the supermarket. Going behind the garbage cans, hiding from casual eyes, he straightened his back and moved his shoulders with relief. which turned out to be surprisingly white and stately. Taking off his wig and peeling off his beard, the tramp began to wash off the dark makeup covering his face. For these purposes, he had a special liquid. Few people knew that the smell of alcohol coming from his clothes was the aroma of cognac with an incredible number of stars on a label. And the beggar's magic ambergris was made by a famous New York perfumer by a special order. When their makeup was gone, the tramp took off his rags and threw them to the trash can. A dark blue polo shirt with the image of a tiny crocodile on the right side of the chest appeared under the rags. Dirty, shapeless trousers of his head, a fine quality jeans Levi's. Touching the wall with his hands, the stranger felt a protruding irregularity, and pressing it, extracted a box from a formed niche. Removing the cover, he saw the dial of the Rolex flash dimly, and the light on the smartphone case flashed invitingly, notifying of missed calls or messages. He dialed the last number from the list and heard the excited voice of his personal bodyguard. "Hello, Mr. Parker. We're going insane with uncertainty. Are you okay?" "Yes, everything is fine." The stranger answered in an authoritative voice, and having heard the affirmative answer, walked towards the nearest park. There, a disguised former tramp got into a luxury limousine, which with the roar of the engine, instantly disappeared into the stream of cars. A week passed, and the strange tramp no longer appeared at the supermarket. Only a cardboard box lay in a corner, as mute proof of his presence. And yet, the supermarket security guard, Henry Simpson, was reprimanded by his superiors, which in itself turned out to be a shock for him. At the same time, the guy did not realize that disciplinary penalty, in some way, is connected with the very beggar whom he humiliated at the door of the supermarket. Meanwhile, on the platform in front of the entrance to the city park, a melody was heard, clinging to the soul and forcing passers-by to turn their heads in surprise. On an improvised stage consisting of plastic boxes that once served as a container for fruit, a miniature girl stood and enthusiastically played a well-known melody. She played fervently, as if the bow was an extension of her hand. The sound produced by the instrument was slightly distorted, and for people versed in music, it was immediately audible. Next to the stage was a little boy, collecting modest toms from random listeners in a shoebox. Suddenly, the box almost fell out of his hands from the unexpected weight caused by the object that fell into it. The boy looked up in bewilderment and saw a tight bundle of banknotes rolled up into a tube. "Sir, no, that's too much. Mary, look at this." The boy stammered. "Just take it," said a voice that seemed familiar to the boy. The girl on the platform stopped playing and looked questioningly at the stranger. He turned out to be a tall, brown-haired man of about 45, with piercing gray eyes. "And here's a gift for you too, beauty," said the stranger, and took out of the bundle a case made of expensive leather, upholstered inside with velvet. "Oh my God! It's the best violin in the world! Who are you? Why do I deserve such an expensive gift? How can I thank you?" Mary asked enthusiastically. "You've already helped me, miss. You just don't remember it. Back then, on the steps of the supermarket. Do you remember?" The stranger replied and gave the girl a pleasant smile. A sweet smile appeared across Mary's face, and a spark of insight flashed in her eyes. Desperately trying not to cry, the girl remembered everything. "Don't cry, miss. Let me take you to a cafe. It's around the corner. The food is amazing," the stranger offered. After his words, Mary and Kevin followed the strange man, folding their instruments and disassembling the improvised stage. At the table, munching a hamburger with an appetite and washing it all down with a Coke, Mary Adams told her story. In fact, Kevin wasn't her son. Mary picked up the boy in the street when he, tired of the scandals and debauchery of alcoholic parents, ran away from his home. Mary was an orphan herself and grew up in an orphanage. Therefore, she knew what the boy was expecting in the near future. Together, they began to travel around the towns of the state and give street concerts. In fact, Mary replaced Kevin's mother, and the boy became very attached to her. And in private, Kevin called his savior Mom. Alfred Parker listened patiently to the girl and said, "You know, Mary, even though I don't look like a kind grandfather wizard, I think I can help you." I will buy you a house, provide with a job, and also I will assist in the registration of the necessary papers for guardianship. Consider it a whim, but my motives are difficult to understand. Thank you. How can I thank you? With tears in her eyes, the girl asked. I don't need anything, Mary. It is I who am grateful that there is a place for kindness and compassion in your heart. Mr. Parker replied. Feeling emotional, the businessman said that he himself was brought up by the street, so the hardships were very close to him. Once he became a man, he dressed up as a beggar once a month to help those who one way or another showed interest in him. It was a kind of charity and an attempt to change the world for the better. With each sortie, there were fewer and fewer worthy people. Mr. Parker was already completely desperate when he stumbled upon Mary and Kevin. It is worth noting that Mr. Parker fulfilled his promise, and now Mary and Kevin live in a luxurious house in Main Street with their own garden and a green lawn in front of the house. Mary Adams is studying at the conservatory, and Kevin, with the support of a tutor, is actively preparing for school. Mr. Parker, as before, once a month dresses up as a beggar and checks passers-by for humanity and compassion, which are becoming fewer and fewer.